Of the victims in the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Texas, have reached a settlement with the city. They'll receive a total of $2 million from the city of Uvalde and are continuing negotiations on a settlement with the county.
This Friday marks 2 years since a gunman killed 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers. And as part of their push for justice, their families are also suing more than 90 law enforcement officers there, as well as the school district, as well as some employees. Javier Cesares, whose daughter Jackie was killed in the shooting, says there needs to be accountability for the police response.
It's been an unbearable 2 years. We all know who took our children's lives, but there was an obvious systemic failure out there on May 24th. The whole world saw that. No amount of money is worth our lives of our children. Justice and accountability has always been my main concern.
Our Lilia Luciano has been covering this story for us. She's been covering it from the very beginning. She's in Uvalde with more. So, Lilia, talk to us about what you have learned about this settlement, how it's being received by people on different sides of the aisle there in Uvalde.
Look, Lana, when you hear $2 million for this horrible loss of life, it seems absurd. But it speaks to where these families are 2 years in. They continue searching for accountability. They continue searching for answers. They are accepting $2 million, which is what the insurance from the city was able to award them. But they could have, as the attorney at the press conference we were just at was saying, they could have continued their lawsuit against the city. They're choosing not to do that because they say that they hope this allows for that openness to heal. This has been an incredibly fractured community. Many of the neighbors have turned against the families who suffered. I've heard from families over these last 2 years who say they're telling us to get over it. They're telling us to move on. And today what we heard from these families is we don't want to keep putting a burden on the rest of the community. It has been so just depressing to hear how they've had to fight with the city to even have the proper maintenance, to even have the funds that they have put from their own pockets to restoring some of the ornaments at the grave sites of their children. And today they're saying, we'll take the $2 million and hopefully we can move forward and we can move together. A couple of the fathers who spoke up today were talking about how, you see just driving into Uvalde, there's all these signs that say Uvalde strong, Uvalde strong. And they're saying if that were true, that's part of what Javier Cáceres said, this room would be full. This room was empty. This community is not here standing with these families. These families are fighting a fight against the city, which today finally was settled, against the state of Texas, which goes on, as Errol was just reporting. There is an ongoing lawsuit that was announced today. This lawsuit will be filed against 92 law enforcement officers from the Texas Department of Public Safety, against the school principal, against Chief Arredondo, who was the acting chief that day, as you know, from the school district, and against the state. What they hope, of course, is it doesn't end with these $2 million. Of course, the state has to respond. They said at least the city picked up the phone, talked to us, and was able to sit and negotiate. The state of Texas has not. So their fight for sure continues, but they're feeling like at least here they can continue being part of this community and perhaps mend some of the divisions, some political, a lot having to do with the trauma that have gone on here in this city of Uvalde. And, one of the things that really just shatters you when you hear from these families is that they did not want to put a financial burden on the resources that are available for the rest of the community. And all that they're achieving besides this settlement with the insurance funds is just an agreement from the city for better police training, for a standard for police when they respond to these tragedies, as well as a number of other resources, mental health for the children, for the community, for the families, and that horrible other aspect of the graves. We've heard from families here who say, look, we can't ever leave Uvalde as much as we'd like to move on and from this area because our children are buried here. So that's what they're up against. And their fight with the state continues.
It's incredible to have you there, Lilia, especially considering you covered the immediate aftermath, because I think for a lot of people, you think this is a small town, roughly 15,000 people, and after a massive tragedy like this, you would expect everybody to come together. And from a distance, we see the images, we see Uvalde strong. But despite the trauma that these families have been through, there is this second layer of guilt, not wanting to, as you say, drain the city of resources, but they're trying to change things for the better for everyone. Talk to us a little bit more about what has stood out to you and what long-lasting change these families are trying to make happen with these settlements and lawsuits.
Well, part of what they're doing is making sure that the response from police prevents this not just from happening again here in Uvalde, but in Texas and across the country. Of course, they've been doing a great deal of advocacy, and part of what we heard in terms of the messaging today was, you know, one thing is the police response, the lack of response, the delay in time, but also they are continuing to raise awareness and talk about what led to this in particular, what those officers were fighting against. And this is something that the attorney stressed. He said, look, this was a kid, a teenager basically, with a military-style weapon, and that is what prevented those officers from going in there. Perhaps it's not that easy, he said, for good guys with guns to stop somebody who had no experience firing guns before, but had an incredibly powerful weapon. There's the advocacy locally. There's the police accountability, the county, the city, the state, the federal accountability. They're also suing federally. But there's also the fight to control guns, which is what a lot of these families have showed their faces and used their voices for at the federal, at the state, and the local level.
Yeah, there very well could be long-lasting change that comes out of this tragedy, and it would be thanks to those relatives of those young victims. I know you'll have more on the CBS Evening News tonight, Lilia Luciano in Uvalde. Thank you so much.